By the summer of 1861, the smart money wasn't on the Union. It was on the South. The Confederacy was outnumbered, outgunned, and outbuilt. But it had something Washington did not. A generation of officers forged in the same academies, and a belief that one decisive blow could win the war. Many of those officers had worn United States blue. Robert E. Lee had been offered command of the Union armies. He turned it down. Not because he loved secession, but because he would not draw his sword against Virginia. In Richmond and Charleston, the mood was not fearful. It was electric. Volunteers poured into camps. Bands played. Church bells rang. Newspapers promised that Southern courage and Northern caution would make this a short, glorious struggle. Then came Manassas, what the North called Bull Run, the first great test, and the moment the Confederacy began to look unstoppable. The South had the generals, the ground, and the early victories. For a time, it seemed history itself was on their side. But advantage is not destiny, and every triumph carried a cost the Confederacy could not yet see. This is the story of those first years, when Southern arms dazzled the world, and the illusion of victory burned brightest. After Bull Run, the South believed.
News just arrived. They beat the Yanks.
What began as rebellion had become revelation. Across the Confederacy, victory was treated like proof that courage and conviction could outweigh factories and fleets. Men quoted scripture, women sewed gray, and every new regiment marched out beneath church bells.
Go with God, sons of Virginia.
Confidence turned to rhythm, a people certain that God and geography had chosen their side.
Let them hear you coming, boys!
In Charleston, the send-offs became celebrations. Brass bands drowned the surf. Mothers sang on the pier as sons boarded steamers for Virginia.
Let me hide myself in the...
Factories that once forged rail spikes now cast cannon. Churches became drill grounds. Every hammer blow was a hallelujah.
The Confederacy improvised faster than anyone expected. They built an army, an economy, and a myth all at once.
Out of this fervor rose the names that would define Southern faith, Lee and Jackson.
Jackson believed discipline was devotion. He turned faith into field strategy, and it spread through the entire army.
By spring of 1862, the Army of Northern Virginia was more than an army. It was an idea, a fusion of piety, pride, and precision. Robert E. Lee, newly in command, refined it into method. He knew his men could not match Northern numbers, so he taught them to move like lightning.
General Jackson reports movement in the valley, sir.
Good. Let him keep him guessing. We'll move before they can.
His audacity was matched only by his second. Jackson's light infantry moved 120 miles in a week through the Shenandoah. They called it the Foot Cavalry.
The Valley Campaign was military genius with the theology of a crusade. They believed God guided their march maps.
From Manassas to the 7 Days, the South held its own. Each victory made confidence look like destiny. By December 1862, that faith would meet its greatest proof and its first blind spot. Fredericksburg was a slaughterhouse in reverse. The defenders steady, the attackers shattered. For the South, it looked like invincibility made visible.
Fredericksburg was a textbook defensive victory. The Union charged 11 times and never broke the line.
In Richmond, bells rang again. Churches filled to overflowing. Newspapers called Lee the Hand of Providence. But beneath the hymns was the sound of shovels and stretchers. "We are sure of the Lord's favor," a Confederate sergeant wrote, "but the Lord asks for more of us each day."
Confidence became identity. They saw their hardship as proof of righteousness. The more they suffered, the more they believed.
For a moment, the South seemed unbreakable, led by men it called chosen, fueled by conviction, mistaken for certainty. But momentum is a tide, and tides turn. Every victory bought time and spent blood, and no army, no matter how confident, can spend forever. They had proved they could fight. Now they would have to learn how to win and discover the limits of victory itself. They had proved they could fight. Now they would have to learn how to win. In 1862 and 1863, the Confederacy lived on strategy, a smaller army trying to outthink a nation. Every battle became a wager. Every victory, a miracle paid for in blood. Lee and Jackson, two minds that moved like one. Lee the architect, Jackson the blade. While Washington changed generals like gloves, Richmond trusted two men who seemed carved from certainty.
Lee and Jackson understood maneuver better than anyone in the war. They turned terrain into an ally and improvisation into doctrine.
In August 1862, Lee struck again at Manassas, on the same fields that had baptized the war. The Union advanced twice as strong. The Confederates answered twice as fast. In 2 days, the Union line collapsed. Northern papers called it disaster. Southern papers called it destiny. "We felt the hand of Providence upon us," a Confederate officer wrote. "Our cause is holy, our general divinely favored." Confidence turned into a theory of war. If they believed enough, they could not lose. But Lee was no dreamer. He saw the numbers, the supplies, the inevitable.
We must divide in the face of the enemy. Boldness is prudence in war.
So he chose motion over mass. He divided his army in the shadow of a larger one, a gamble no textbook would dare print. In December 1862, Fredericksburg confirmed the myth of invincibility. But victory hit a slow poison. Rations shrank. Boots wore through. The Southern rail system buckled under its own triumph. "We sleep in holes like foxes now, but we are not beaten," Private Josiah Turner wrote. "We still trust in Lee and in God."
The Southern press never printed defeat. Even hunger became proof of virtue. Suffering was spun as sainthood.
Spring 1863, Chancellorsville. 50,000 Confederates facing 90,000 Union troops in the thickest woods of Virginia. Lee divided his army again, sending Jackson on a night march that would make a history. They moved 20 miles through brush, so thick it blotted out the moon. At dawn, they hit the Union flank like thunder. Hooker's army crumbled. The Union line folded like paper.
Chancellorsville was Lee's masterpiece. Outnumbered 2-1, he achieved his greatest victory by breaking every rule.
But victory came at a price no army could afford. In the confusion after the attack, Jackson rode into the night to scout and was shot by his own men. Lee wept. He called Jackson his right arm, and the Confederacy felt its heartbeat stumble.
Jackson's death was more than tragedy. It was symbol. It told Southerners that even their saints could bleed.
For a moment, the South stood on a summit of its own making. Victorious in battle, united in belief, but starving in silence. Their strategy had been genius. their skill undeniable. But every map Lee unrolled showed the same problem. Fewer men, fewer miles of rail, fewer options left. To win the peace, he would have to risk everything, carry the war to Union soil, and force the world to recognize the Confederacy before it collapsed from within. Strategy and skill had bought time, but time was running out. The men still marched with songs on their lips. The flag still rose bright above the fields. But beneath the music was the sound of a tide beginning to turn. They would carry their confidence into Pennsylvania and meet a reality no map could predict. Gettysburg waited, and with it, the beginning of the end of the Southern advantage. They carried their confidence into Pennsylvania and marched straight into history. By June of 1863, the Army of Northern Virginia was exhausted, but unbeaten. Lee believed one more triumph on Northern soil could end the war on Southern terms. They marched singing Dixie, carrying the dust of 2 years of victory on their boots. But behind every song was hunger, and behind every cheer, exhaustion.
Lee's goal wasn't occupation, it was persuasion. He wanted to force Lincoln to the table, to prove the South could not be subdued.
On July 1st, outside a quiet Pennsylvania town called Gettysburg, that belief met its reckoning. The first day favored Lee. The Union lines buckled.
I heard gunshots. What's happening?
They've crossed the ridge. Stay inside. You'll be safe there.
The Confederates seized the high ground, but not enough of it.
We should move around them, sir.
No. We'll strike them where they stand.
For 2 days, the hills of Gettysburg became an anvil. Every charge, every cannon blast hammered away at the myth of invincibility.
Hold this ridge! Dress the line! Ready for their charge!
On the Union left, a desperate stand saved the entire line. Courage answered courage, and for the first time, Southern skill met an enemy that refused to yield.
Gettysburg shattered the illusion that brilliance could replace numbers. The South had been fighting uphill for 2 years, they just didn't see it yet.
July 3rd, Lee ordered the final assault, a mile of open ground straight into Union artillery. In less than an hour, the charge was broken. Half the men who began it never came back. We went up as men and came back as shadows, a survivor wrote. Even the sun looked gray. The general, who had never lost, took responsibility for everything. And with those words, the South's golden aura cracked. 3 days later, Vicksburg fell on the Mississippi. In the span of 1 week, the Confederacy lost its hope and its heart. In Richmond, church bells stayed silent. For the first time, the South mourned a victory that never came.
The South's brilliance had carried it to the edge of the impossible. But the war had become one of endurance, and endurance was the North's weapon.
By autumn 1863, Confederate hospitals overflowed. Rations dwindled to cornmeal and hope. And yet, they fought on. Their courage was never the question. Their capacity to endure, that was their tragedy.
After Gettysburg, Lee's genius turned defensive. He spent the rest of the war trying not to lose what he had once been certain to win.
The illusion of victory had kept the South alive for 2 years. Now it was gone. And even the bravest armies cannot live on ghosts. The high tide of the Confederacy had broken, but the war was far from over. For 2 years, the South defied the odds. With fewer men, fewer factories, fewer miles of track, it carved victories from courage and conviction. From Manassas to Chancellorsville, it seemed that faith could outfight arithmetic, that brilliance could outmaneuver inevitability. But faith has limits. And strategy cannot feed an army.
That's all there is, fellas. Make it last.
The Confederate dream was never only about battle. It was about a vision of independence, of a people convinced they could build a new nation from conviction alone.
The South's early advantage was never just tactics or terrain. It was belief.
By mid-1863, the illusion had begun to fade. The victories had cost too much. The soldiers too thin. The fields too empty. The promise of Providence too quiet. He had led his men farther than logic could explain. But even he knew the South was running out of road. "We are fighting against time," Lee wrote, "and time is with the enemy." In the months ahead, the war would shift. New armies would rise. And in the White House, Abraham Lincoln would redefine what the struggle truly meant. The Southern advantage was real, but it was never enough. The tide was turning, and the fight for the soul of the nation was only beginning.